More than 11,000 inmates in Massachusetts prisons, and as many as a quarter of them suffer from some sort of mental illness. In this week's in-depth focus report, we're looking at the intersection of mental illness and criminal justice. WGBH News reporter Adam Reilly takes us to a special courtroom where the focus is on treatment instead of punishment.
As most of Boston braced for a massive snowstorm last week, Courtroom 12 at the Edward Brook Courthouse was bustling. It's here that Judge Patricia Bernstein presides over the Boston Mental Health Court, where mentally ill individuals who've gotten in legal trouble can win a reprieve.
These were conditions imposed back in November. As far as we know, has there been compliance?
The premise behind the court is simple. When a mentally ill individual is arrested, the state can try to put them behind bars or try to help them get treatment.
Ms. Sanders is an individual who's chronically mentally ill and has been homeless for quite some time.
That's the court's social worker, Meredith Lipman, describing one particular defendant. The mental health court sees persons accused of a variety of crimes, from larceny to lewdness to assault and battery, and deals with a wide range of diagnoses.
We had been trying to find her a placement in a sober living facility that could also manage her chronic schizophrenia.
After an initial screening, and if the prosecutor and judge agree, defendants get a rigorous treatment plan instead of a criminal trial or jail time. There is some tension between traditional ideas of justice and the work the mental health court does. We think of courts in terms of crime and punishment, but the mental health court is about getting vulnerable individuals services they might not otherwise receive. If that combination seems counterintuitive, the people involved say it's also highly effective.
I've watched certain individuals I've had personally on probation over the past 2 years, and I know that none of those individuals have come back with any new offenses.
According to Court Probation Officer Gregory Clifford, that's because participants get support in every facet of their lives.
At the end of the completing our session, you had an individual who was not only off the street, they may have had housing at this time, they're properly medicated, and they have providers in place that will remain there even when they're off probation.
Sometimes the defendants don't want all the help they get. This woman had asked to be released from custody to live with a family member. Instead, she was held pending placement in a residential facility, and she made her anger clear.
Why you do this to me? You didn't have to go by my sister's house. Why you do this to me, Rachel Ann?
He's all set.
Thank you. And the next date, please.
3 weeks. Maybe my social security going to be cut off. You know that.
But for others, the mental health court means freedom they wouldn't otherwise have, and treatment they desperately need. This is actually a model that is growing here in Massachusetts. Emily, there are already mental health courts in Boston, obviously also in Springfield and Plymouth, and 2 more are in the works to open in the fairly near future in West Roxbury and Roxbury.
So last night you did a report on special police training dealing specifically with people with mental illness, schizophrenia. How does this correlate to the court system?
This is sort of the other side of the coin that represents when it comes to, or in terms of, keeping mentally ill individuals from just flowing into the prisons at high rates. You know, the training that we looked at yesterday is about convincing officers to respond in a way that maybe they avoid arrest, get people treatment instead of bringing them into the court system. This is what occurs, once they are in the court system. It's another point at which individuals can be redirected from a punitive track or a classical justice track into treatment instead.
All right, Adam Reilly, thanks so much for that.
Thanks, Emily.
All right, well, my next guest is taking the lead in shaping the mental health court system in Massachusetts. Judge Rosemary Minahan runs the Plymouth Mental Health Court and has presided over mental health hearings at Bridgewater State Hospital since 1993. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So what Adam just focused on was the Boston courts. How is it different in Plymouth?
In Plymouth, we began in 2010, and one of the things we see in the session is a tremendous need for mental health services. In the Boston area, they utilize a pretrial model and a post-trial model. And in the Plymouth area, what we found was we needed the utilization of probation services as well. So it's just another quiver in our group.
So in other words, you treat these people before they go to trial. You take them into this court system.
We actually use a post-trial model. So in the Plymouth court and in the Springfield court as well, defendants are post-trial, they're after trial. So they're both competent to stand trial and criminally responsible for what has happened in the case. We then bring them into Plymouth Health Court, they're screened, and then after the screening, if they're accepted into Plymouth Health Court, what we do is provide a continuum of care services within the construct of a probation model. So what we try to do is reduce the frequency and the intensity and the duration of their accessing emergency services, whether that's arrest, whether that's an admission through the emergency room, which often is the case, where they get taken through an ambulance to an emergency room. Often you see people being taken when they are taken out of court with the sheriff. So it could be a probation revocation as well. We try to reduce that.
So in Adam's piece, we saw a woman who was resisting the judge's orders, and she was arguing back, saying, I'm going to lose my benefits. We don't know sure exactly what she was talking about, but do you see a lot of that yourself?
Most of the time when individuals go into our mental health court, they're not only referred into the mental health court through either a family member, law enforcement, sometimes the defense attorney asks for that, but they go in voluntarily, so they fully understand, and again, they are competent to stand trial, so they understand that they're going on probation, that probation will involve certain things they have to do to stay in the community. And those things involve staying alcohol and drug free, staying medication compliant, and accessing the services. And we do provide this continuum of care services.
So a number of these people, though, have committed very serious felonies. How do you know that this is the better way to treat them? And I know in your case, you had to convince the court system that this was the way to proceed, not kind of the old model was treat them like everybody else, convict them, lock them up.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we've found is in mental health court, unlike the traditional probation model, these individuals are now observed and really watched and supervised much more closely. So instead of the regular probation model where they may see a probation officer from time to time, in the mental health court, they see me every week. They see the probation officer all the time. We have an LICSW, which is fully funded through the Department of Mental Health.
Nobody knows what that means, but that's all right.
Well, a licensed independent clinical social worker who is on staff. And when individuals become in crisis, he knows about that because he's speaking to them and realizes that there might be a need to tweak some of the probation conditions. So what it does is it enhances public safety because we see them more often and we supervise them more closely. There is still the sanction potentially that they would go to jail, and that's there.
They know that. All right. Judge Minahan, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
All right, well, for more of our in-depth focus report, head to our website. You'll find all our coverage, including a look inside new police training, preparing officers for incidents involving someone with a mental illness. That's at WGBHnews.org.